Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Muhi Khwaja with the Muslim Philanthropy Podcast at American Muslim Community Foundation. Today, we are joined by a close friend of mine, Zain Shamoon. So we grew up in Michigan together, and he's been doing some fantastic work. My lens of Zain is that he is somebody who has always been dedicated to mental health, awareness, breaching into the Muslim community. He does a lot of spoken word, rap, music, poetry, all of the above. And I've had a pleasure of growing up with Zain. I'll turn it over to him to share a little bit more about himself. But just really excited to have you on, Zain.
Yeah, thank you so much, and for welcoming me on the pod. It's interesting to see, like where the work that you're doing and how it kind of interacts with the work that I've been doing. I know we've had talks in the past, but yeah. So Muhi and I have known each other for a long time and have been sort of like distant observers of each other's work across life, which has been really great. But yeah, I'm really passionate about mental health, and I'm also really passionate about where people's mental health isn't just about, telling them to self-care more and telling them to take the right medication, but providing them a sense of community and removing the barriers that are in the way so that people can experience a greater quality of life and also better relationships. That's sort of where my heart has always been throughout my life and all the work that I do.
Excellent. So, just as always, I want to give you an opportunity to share more about your background, your life growing up in the suburbs of Detroit, how that framed your lens of life. And then you can take it through like education, career, background, but allowing you to just kind of paint that picture for everyone.
For sure, I'll give you the cliff notes. So I grew up in Southeast Michigan. I'm a millennial. I'm the only millennial in my family. My father, very uniquely for a South Asian man, it was a manager of social services, which is very rare, as you know,
Right.
especially back then. So we have an imam, a scholar that is here in Canton, where Muhi and I both kind of grew up around, named Imam Suleiman Ali, Sheikh Suleiman Ali, who was interfaced with some of the work that my father was doing at the time, because there was a scarcity of Muslims who were supporting other Muslims when it came to topics that we don't necessarily always want to touch upon, which are talked about in our seerah, but aren't necessarily talked about by our modern communities as much as they should be. So I had a very different lens than a lot of my friends growing up, where it's like you help people and you do talk about divorce when it comes up. You do talk about housing
Yeah.
when it comes up. You do talk about drugs and substances when it comes up. And although those things were stigmatized at a large level in the community that I grew up in, my own journey was witnessing. You don't even know that you're witnessing it because you're just a kid playing, right? But like you like know that became language. Like how do you remove people's barriers? So that's where I grew up. I grew up around my dad and my mom both being really, focused on service of people. And my brother, myself, and my sister all became health providers in some sort of way. My brother an ER doctor, my sister a social worker, and then myself, I became a marriage and family therapist, or a couple and family therapist. Um, Growing up in Southeast Michigan was interesting. Was very I don't know, like the best way I can describe it is like it was very like Mitt Romney-ish. I don't know, like growing up, like like white Republican and the tokenized minority, and your worth is based on your grades, and your worth is based on your ability to be seen at the white man's table, kind of thing. Again, words that I have now that I didn't have growing up. I found my way to kind of carve out my own identity, my own way of relating to myself and who I am through art and spoken word. I like to tell people that my first mental health therapist that was culturally sensitive, and I want to emphasize my first that was culturally sensitive, was poetry. It wasn't, random psychiatrist that I was meeting that didn't want to talk about my culture or my religion, or, kind of saw those things as impediments rather than validating me for my identity. And so
Hmm.
I think poetry, art, was my first validating source. And then I would also say finding out the mental health aspects of Sira, maybe named differently in the Sira, but those things, discovering them for myself. And unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of support besides Sheikh Ali, to seek those things out. Number one,
Hmm.
number two, and then number three, I think like I wanted to be there for young folks in general, but Muslims who didn't, a lot of people think that therapy is just for white people because, we have stigma in our communities. That's partially true, but in 2026, it's also because when people arrive to therapy, there are too many therapists and providers who do not work from a deeply culturally sensitive lens. And when they do, it's performative. And the anxiety of either showing up as an ally or on the other extreme, I don't want to talk about these things because I don't want to get it wrong. Those are anxieties that are held by providers, and it's not the fault of the client who's trying to just have a better life. And I always wanted to be somebody who supported other people going into this field, but also myself being that person who could give that affirmation to a client where they can just be there. We know that therapy works better. The biggest part of therapy that we know, statistically, that generates positive outcomes is a strong therapeutic alliance. And you can't do that without broaching people's cultural and religious backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. So, take me through in terms of like how you built all of these frames of reference, whether it was like undergrad, graduate school, your work as a therapist, like what's helping you get to this point?
Well, you already know this about me, but growing up, I had major, like intense obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms.
Yeah.
Like it would take me a long time to make wudu. The saying goes that Shaitan will not exhaust you with stuff that you don't do. So he'll take the stuff that matters to you and exhaust you with it.
Yeah.
And I really had a deep experience of that. And so, I struggled. I struggled in school. Outside, I mean, people saw me as this. I used to perform a lot, right? I did a lot of shows. I would, across the Midwest, I would do different shows, different conferences, different colleges, and I think that's what people knew of me from a distance. But like inside, I was really struggling. I had struggled
Mm-hmm.
with ideation, depression, isolation. Although I have siblings, they're much older than me. Although I am very extroverted, you can be alone in a crowd of people that you don't feel you trust.
Yeah.
And so I struggled with that. So when I went to college, actually it was my sister. She's a social worker too. I remember I was like, I'm not at all inspired by some of the stuff that I feel like I have to take because my peers are taking biology classes or they're all pre-med or they're all going to law school or whatever. And I remember she said to me, take whatever the heck you want. And so I was like, okay. So I started taking like theater classes, human development classes, high level family therapy, like grad school prep classes. And I was like kicking butt. And some of these
Yeah.
classes were easier than others, but even the Scantron like lists classes, like they had like essays and whatever, I was just flowing and it came naturally for me to talk about family dynamics. So in college, when I discovered that sort of personal renaissance, and at that time, like I was doing a lot of creative endeavors, like I was doing a theater project. I started like dancing. I was writing poetry. I was performing. And the private part that I was struggling with, my own relationship to myself, that started to change because I had a really good therapist who was
Yeah.
willing to talk to me about my culture, religion, and family. And I also started taking courses that aligned with what felt natural for me and how I wanted to give back in society. At that time, around the end of my graduate life and sorry, my undergraduate life and the beginning of graduate school, my master's in couple and family therapy, I got connected with Dr. Hamada Talib and also Dr. Farha Abbasi. And
Mm-hmm.
at a very young age, they courted me. I was very blessed. They courted me. And Samir Ahmed, FYI, I felt very courted by these people who were kind of on their own in the field into a space for the Muslim Mental Health Conference, the Institute for Muslim Mental Health, and other adjacent endeavors. And I've been part of those communities ever since.
Yeah. Um, you know, Several names you mentioned, other Michigander connections. And I think now definitely on a national scale as well, through the work that each of them are respectively doing. And I think that's one of the blessings of, having this podcast and sharing this work, and even just growing up in Michigan, just knowing these people who are doing fantastic work and sharing it with the community. Um, so tell me a little bit more about the Institute for Muslim Mental Health. And I know that they've done like academic journals, that they've done the conference, and different avenues of um, just building a network for people in this space. So share a little bit more about the organization.
Absolutely. So the Institute for Muslim Mental Health informally started in 2006. with the Journal of Muslim Mental Health, which Hamada Talib started, right? So that's he's been the executive chief of the journal for 20 years.
Hmm.
It just became Fahad Khan this year.
Okay.
And so that was where a lot of Muslims started to publish their work and a way that was for us and by us. It was
Nice.
early on, so it had its issues, and its challenges like anything new does. But it's awesome to say that that's been around now for 20 years. Going to this year's a 20th anniversary. So
Huge.
around 2008, 2009, we formed, just like APA and psychology journals like have this relationship, or AMA and like their main medical journal have a relationship. We said we
Mm.
need to establish an institute around this. I was like 20 years old and around these people establishing this. And it was everywhere, like Dr. Hamada was at Hamid, he was at Yale. And so like it was kind of everywhere, but there was always a connection to Michigan as a nexus.
Yeah.
So we started doing these conferences. Now the conferences were ran through the Department of Psychiatry and Dr. Abbasi at Michigan State, so they were actually separate from the institute because of the
Hmm.
funding was separate, but it was the same players because it was so
Right.
intimate and so like startup-y in the beginning. And it just blossomed from there. The Institute for Muslim Mental Health, let me explain sort of what it is and what it's not. So the institute it has two legs to it. One is to enhance education about mental health for the Muslim community at large. So you don't
Yeah.
have to be a professional, but if you want to learn about ADHD, if you want to learn about domestic violence survivorship, if you want to learn about autism, if you want to learn about depression, preventing suicide, we have programs for you, Muslim community at large. So that's the first leg. The second leg is to support and develop professionals who are Muslim, who are mental health professionals. So
Yes.
that idea, I was very isolated after I graduated. Outside of this community, waiting for the conference every year, you're kind of on your own, right? Millennials, for those who are listening who might be younger than Muhi or I, millennials spent a lot of time doing like private iftars, like, with mac and cheese or whatever, because we didn't have the abundance of like, what we have now in big cities where, people take off for Eid on their workday. Like it's not, these are
Yeah.
things that we didn't have in 2003, 2004. And so I didn't want the Muslim mental health professional to have that sort of approximated isolation. And so our organization, especially over the last 2 years, has really focused on supporting mental health professionals who are Muslim to have a community, to not have to wait for a grand conference to feel like this is like, I know I'm not supposed to use this word as a mental health professional, to not feel crazy about like, oh, I
Mm.
really care about this stuff, but people in my family or community don't, and I have to like pull teeth to get them the care. When they come to an annual conference, they feel like, well, they don't have to explain themselves because there's other social
Sure.
workers, counselors, psychiatrists, imams who are taking mental health training that care. But you deserve that type of professional support throughout the year. So we have a membership that has different perks. We have a blog. We have opportunities for people to speak. We're trying to get in the CE game. We're not there yet. And we have meetups, and we really want to support mental professionals. So again, mental health education for the Muslim community and um, support for the professional who's a Muslim and a mental health professional.
Really cool. Um, I want to ask a little bit more about the Institute for Muslim Mental Health, but then I want to also bring up, I know, something that you're very passionate about in terms of narrative of pain. So share anything else that you maybe wanted to about the programs and services about IMMH, and then kind of transition into kind of your programming and core feature work that you do through narratives of pain.
For sure. So, just to kind of close on the Institute for Muslim Mental Health, it is the premier organization that focuses on mental health, Muslim mental health professional development. And we have a lot of programs coming up. Some of them are webinars. We have meetups. We had one about the Sirah's lessons about grief. Knowing that the Prophet ﷺ, it's not that he was void of feeling and just like went with God. It was that he had pain, he had struggle, and trusted God in it. And a lot of people misunderstand this as complaint, which they think is haram. But no, he experienced deep pain and trusted God in that. And we had a big talk about that recently. at Rayon Center, actually, in Plymouth, Canton, Plymouth, Michigan, this past year. So we have more events like that coming up. We do have a campaign going on right now to support more programming. For me, I would always like there to be more and more programming. And right now, there's a scarcity of these types of programming. So the more that you can support us, the more that you can see these programs happen for the professionals and for the Muslim community at large. And unfortunately, just to give one last example, we have way too much domestic violence and way too much suicidality in our communities. I had a client, well, it was one of my colleagues' clients in community mental health who just passed away by suicide. And to prevent these things, we have to be able to talk about them and organize around them and inform our public, not just our professionals, about that. So, I think our programming is crucial. So if you want to support, please check out our website, Institute for Muslim Mental Health, IMMH, and we'll provide links and whatever afterwards. But to transition into the narratives of pain, if that's cool. So I've always believed that gathering, community, and expression and mental health they're married. Yeah. And I think that people often think about professional life or mental health as like this academic endeavor, and you have to go and get a certification in a really high level mental health strategy or theory. And as somebody who loves learning about theory, who was a professor for 7 years in a graduate school who taught theory to students, none of that matters if you don't provide people with the general resources of life. And one of those that a lot of our diasporas, being either South Asian or in the Muslim community, if you look at like our history, our tradition, and the way that the Sahaba used to gathering and storytelling are fundamental ways of health, fundamental ways of development that often are ignored until they're co-opted by Western psychology to go, hey, we discovered this thing where gathering could be a unique. No, we've already known this in our tradition, that gathering and storytelling is a way to be fully seen, to welcome each other. So about 11 years ago, myself, a good friend of mine, Hamada Ali, who does this. There's so many Hamad Alis, but a good
Yeah.
friend of mine, Hamad Ali, who runs a tutoring company for disenfranchised families called Ally Learning. Him and I got together and we created, with a correct collection of other people, a project called the Narratives of Pain. We launched it at the Muslim Mental Health Conference in 2015. And what it is trauma-informed storytelling. It takes the properties of therapy, the private space of therapy, and it puts it in the public. Basically saying these things that we go get from a therapist, they ought to be in your general life. So what we did is we created certain boundaries, like people don't take video of each other without consent. People are not allowed to take each other's stories and make of them what they please. And people who are in the audience who are witnessing can like step out or step in if they're like reminded of their own stories when they're listening. We have a platform where people can sing, talk plainly, recite poetry. Here's something I'm going through, and I'd like to be witnessed by it. So we like to say healing through the telling and witnessing of stories. And alhamdulillah, I think we've done almost 100 shows over the last 10
Wow.
years. We've gone to Yale, we've gone to Palo Alto, Toronto, DC. Most of them are in Michigan, and there's a chapter in Seattle. It's a nonprofit. None of the organizers make any money off of it. It's just about the intimacy of gathering and sharing story. Sometimes you'll go to like an event and it's like a poetry book reading or a comedy night, and the host will like riff afterwards and start making jokes or whatever. And I think for those platforms, that's appropriate. However, if you're inviting people, hey, this is a therapeutic space where you can like unleash your trauma a little bit for witnessing, it's really important for people to not step on those. So we really take care of the aesthetic quality of it,
Yeah.
and how the host pauses and doesn't. And there's a training involved. And we have about like 20 people on our team, about a core 4 or 5 of us that plan most of it. Our next one is going to be happening at Soho Banquet Hall in Westland, Michigan, in 2 weeks from the recording of this podcast, on April 10th at 7 o'clock. And it's free. It's free for anybody to come. And if you want a storyteller or support other people, but that is a labor of love for me because, like I said earlier today, poetry was my first culturally sensitive therapy. And I believe that people deserve not to just wait for their clinician or some magic medication to help them feel seen and heard. So to put that in community,
Yeah.
that's what Narratives of Pain is.
Really beautiful. Um, I, have seen you perform many years ago, But I have never been to a Narratives of Pain, and I know that it's definitely on my to-do list when one becomes available. Still want to invite you to Tampa to coordinate or make the one in
Let's do
Austin
it.
happen with my other friend. And you got to go to um, the
Moskers?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Share a
man.
little bit more
Life,
about that experience and what it is.
yo, something happened in 2015 or around there where a lot of organizations just started blossoming, right? That are about these like making space or reclaiming space in the Muslim community, right?
Yeah,
Muslim Town Hall was one. Muslim Writers Collective was another one. Narratives was another one. And Gamma, Gathering All Muslim Artists, was another one that kind of happened around that time. What's
yeah,
so interesting is like I know people who know Abbas, like including you, Muhi, right?
yeah.
And we just like kind of like overlapped here and there at different times. So somehow, and here's the crazy thing is like nobody at Moskers knows that I used to be a performer.
Got it.
Okay. So I link up with a boss. You know, we both have ADH PhD is what I like to call it. And we, you know, you can toss up a concept in the air, talk about a bunch of other things, and then the first concept comes back down and you
It's so
continue,
true.
right? And
Yeah.
so him and I, it was like we knew each other for a very long time. And beautifully eccentric people we are.
Hmm.
And we really hit it off. And I went and we do this thing called Soundscape, which is very similar to narratives. It's an intimate environment where people are storytelling with each other. The difference is that these are all artists who may, to different degrees, usually be are usually asked or tasked to like perform for somebody,
Hmm.
for the algorithm, for the hits on Spotify, for dinner, right, or whatever, or for
Yeah.
white folks, right? And what Moskers did is, you know, it's a film festival, right? It's a beautiful film festival, but there's these intimate jam sessions that happen that are very spontaneous. They're not performing for anyone else but yourself to be witnessed. And there was a lot of overlap between that and narratives. So I felt right at home with it. And I had not performed my own pieces for an audience since 2017, you know, because I used to perform in my
Wow.
20s.
Yeah.
And but I performed 2 nights in a row for this like collection of artists in Edmonton. And it was so great. And if I can connect this to my personal story for a second,
Please.
my experience of being a young artist in spoken word and hip hop or whatever was two extremes growing up. One was people asked you to be a caricature of the communities we take this art form from, which is really condescending, is really honestly, there's a lot of exoticism in it, whatever. And in the Muslim community, in addition, the second thing that I was dealing with is this sort of competitive capitalist, like who is better than who thing. We had a
Yeah.
lot of artists come from Michigan, who were interested in R&B and hip hop, and like we have some greatest hits kind of people. We got like 786, we got Lazarus, we got all these people from back in the day that were here. And I remember at that time when I was growing up, 18, 19, 20, and I started performing, people like without even like seeing if that was what I was interested in, would start doing these comparative analyses with each other. We do our best best approximation of like what is called proximity to whiteness politics, right? Like you need to Bell Hooks talks about like you need to see yourself through having more power than somebody else. And when you're young, you don't realize that that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? So when I went to Moskers and it wasn't about that at all, there was like a young 18-year-old Zain that was like, oh shit, I needed this. I needed this when I was
Yeah.
like, it was just like there was a humility, like nobody was like, oh, I need the mic for longer. Like it was like a whole, it didn't matter if we didn't perform. Like I can't, I mean, that's the best way I can explain it. It didn't matter if we didn't perform. It was
Yeah.
just like a very communal gathering. It felt like a Kawali, but like through different art forms.
Sure.
And I really enjoyed it, and I plan to go back. And the cool thing is, right now, Umar Khan, Abbas, and myself are working on a project together. So it gave me a community of a mental health professional, sorry, of musicians who really care about gathering. And I needed that for myself. So even though I host narratives, and I enjoy that community, there is a responsibility that comes in with setting that up with my team, like we put it
Yeah.
together. So to be fully engrossed in being a community member who is being given that service, I loved it,
Right.
and I want to go back.
Amazing. I'm really glad to hear that. And I definitely wanted to go, but when Abbas was telling me about it, and I was just like, you have to meet Zain. Like, I think this would be right up his alley and all of that.
Thanks
So,
for connecting us, by the way.
oh no, happy to do that. And I've enjoyed my conversations with Abbas as well, of just like talking about everything and anything, and then like randomly talking about something else, but like he follows the trail of conversation,
Yeah,
and
we call
he's
it
just
conversational jazz.
yeah, definitely a lot of improv in there. Um, so Zane, like it's a real pleasure to just kind of have an opportunity to share and get a window into these different aspects of your professional life. Um, is there anything else that you wanted to share with our community in terms of things that you're involved with, or even just like advice that you have for community in these spaces, whether they're a musician, whether they're in mental health, whether they're just living life as a Muslim in America?
Yeah. So a couple things. So the first thing is with regard to mental health and helping people who are struggling, um, some of the greatest people on earth struggle, go through challenges. There's a whole year of that's affectionately called the year of grief the Prophet ﷺ went through. And in addition to other hardships he had to go throughout his life. And so you do not need to be a mental health professional to affirm people's mental health. You don't have to subscribe to agree with what people are going through. You don't have to even subscribe to somebody's lifestyle to wish for somebody to have a better quality life. So if you don't know how to help, you can definitely help with your wallet, but you can also help with, just trying to get somebody connected to the right person. So don't
Mm-hmm.
underestimate your ability to show up for people, even if it's just to talk to them for 5 minutes or to get them connected to the right person. The second thing, which is kind of adjacent for artists or even people who are dabbling in any creative form, let yourself make bad stuff. Like it's one of the lessons I learned. I challenged myself this past Ramadan to write at least 25 different like 16 bar lyric sets.
Yep.
And in the past in Ramadan, I always used to write poems. And in the beginning, it was really hard for me because I really wanted the poem to be good. Okay, make sure you write a good poem. But I don't know what the hell that means, number one. But number two, like it's like, do I like writing or do I like writing only if I can get the like dopamine of it feeling good?
Sure.
Right? It's like, do you like the art of playing basketball or do you only like praise for playing basketball? Like, there's a difference.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you love the art, you have to be willing to go through the garbage of it. And there's something beautiful about that because maybe your masterpiece is five garbage pieces away. So, like,
Mm.
my recommendation to artists and the creatives out there, it just make stuff, even if it sucks, just make
Yeah.
stuff because it keeps your mind flowing and it keeps you side note, it keeps you away from all this capitalist expectation that you have to perform and break your mind and break your body, and then you deserve play. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already given you dignity through his rahmah. You don't have to prove your worth, especially not to the machine. And Ramadan, which we just got through, is a beautiful time to remember family matters, friends matter, your development matters. Just make things. Just make things, do things that are awesome. And trust in through tawakkul that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grow you through your efforts, not necessarily through your greatest pieces. And so that's my second piece of advice.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate it, Zane. It's been a pleasure catching up and just really looking forward to all the work that you're going to continue to do. And till the next time we see one another, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
You got it.